Carpool is proudly presented by Classic Cover Prestige, exceptional cover for exceptional vehicles.
Hello and welcome to Carpool. Every week we'll be sharing the latest and greatest vehicles on the market today. Coming up, James Bond's finest fleet car, the Aston Martin DBS Superleggera, Bentley's bespoke SUV, the Bentayga V8 diesel. But first, the latest incarnation of Honda's legendary Civic Type R. When you boil it right down, Honda is all about consistency. Consistency of manufacturing, consistency of performance. You know, these guys know a thing or two about panel gaps. But when it comes to the Civic Type R, they're consistently bonkers. To put it mildly, the Type R has been, across 5 generations, an absolute weapon. It really does fly in the face of the idea that Honda's a conservative manufacturer, obsessed with packaging and practicality over pure performance. When Honda's engineers decide they do want to push the boundaries in the sports car arena, they go to extremes. Now, obviously, the Honda Civic Type R is all about aggression, very much aggressive in the front, but of course, this rear end of the car is the real talking point. It's got this huge spoiler assembly, you've got these strakes on the roof, and then you've got this diffuser down the bottom surrounding your triple exhaust. It's all designed to kind of suck the car to the ground and let the air flow through without that turbulence you might get at higher speeds. The cool thing about this spoiler assembly, though, is that when you're sitting up front in the driver's seat, it doesn't restrict your view out the back. You've got this massive spoiler at the top here, but you can't see that because it's above the roofline, and then down here it's completely glass. That enormous wing isn't a new addition for this version. It's acted as a giant billboard for the Type R's street credibility over several generations. At various times in the past, the Type R has appeared as a 4-door sedan in the Japanese domestic market, and it even had its very own shape for the European market as well. The last iteration, which we didn't get here in New Zealand, appearing as a 3-door hatch. Honda never strays too far from the small engine blueprint. Over the last 22 years, its Type R Integra and Civic engines have managed to wring out heaps of horsepower from a very compact powertrain. These are high-revving engines with the sort of ridiculous redline limits you'd expect to see from a superbike rather than a passenger car. And it's worth noting that actually the last iteration of the Type R was the first turbocharged one. Before that, they were naturally aspirated. So the redline that you're achieving on the track is even more impressive. You don't realise until you haven't got a manual gearbox for a while what a joy it is to drive one. Very short throw sort of shift, it's lovely to use. Under the bonnet we've got a 2-litre VTEC turbo, 228 kilowatt engine. So the thing that remains with this 5th generation Type R Civic is just how point and shoot the whole experience is. It's got electric steering, but it feels very mechanical. Just an amazing sort of linear process to the way that it builds speed, builds momentum, so much power right through the rev range, as all those sort of performance Honda engines do. The ones that aren't in F1 anyway. If you've ever driven a Honda S2000 from the 1990s, you might actually find a few little similarities between that car and the Civic Type R. It's not just the sports seats you're sitting in or the way that the steering wheel sits nice and close to your chest with that fantastic 6-speed manual transmission falling to hand, but actually the gauges, the dials. Honda's engineers have really called back to that performance car of old when they're looking at how the instrument binnacle in this car is laid out. Perhaps the Type R's biggest asset, however, is its pure bang-for-buck factor. This is a $60,000 hot hatch, which actually has 228 kilowatts under the bonnet. If you weigh it up against something like the Volkswagen Golf R, it actually has slightly more horsepower, but costs a significant $9,000 less. It's a similar story with the Renault Megane RS, which can only muster 205 kilowatts, but costs around the same amount. Now, I say hot hatch, and the Type R definitely is still a 5-door, but it's fair to say that it's grown immeasurably over the last few generations, as have all Civics. It's now 2.7 metres long and 1.9 metres wide, so it's no insubstantial thing. To compensate for the size of the Type R, Honda's engineers have ensured short front and rear overhangs. This means the car retains excellent weight distribution, and coupled with a low centre of gravity, it really has that sort of wheel at each corner go-kart feel when you're on a nice piece of twisty tarmac. The Civic Type R received numerous awards as soon as it was released. In fact, it topped various best-of polls for that year. It also became a bit of an instant track hero. It became the fastest front-wheel drive car around the famous Nürburgring in Germany. Kind of appropriate then that the car we've got today is painted in championship white. Now, I've been talking a lot about Honda's pedigree, but even in the last few years, the company really has ramped up its efforts in the sports car arena. You only have to look at both the 1990 and the 2016 versions of the iconic NSX to see what the same company that makes the Jazz city car can do when it's had its morning coffee. In fact, the latest edition of the NSX sees it recast as a V6 hybrid supercar. And then, of course, a couple of years ago at the Frankfurt Motor Show, they totally surprised everybody with the urban EV concept, this diminutive little electric car that harks back to the original 1970s Honda Civic. And of course, there's this, the Type R, which remains an incredible performance car, as it has for several generations. I think all told, Honda's got their mojo back. And a consistent, reliable manufacturer such as Honda rocking its sports car mojo, well, all I can say is the future looks bonkers, but in a good way.
Classic Cover Prestige. Exceptional cover for exceptional vehicles. Available through approved brokers or contact the Classic Cover team direct. Carpool is proudly presented by Classic Cover Prestige. Exceptional cover for exceptional vehicles.
Do you want to see an SUV that you've never seen before? Here it is. It's a Bentley Bentayga V8 diesel. Now, I know what you're thinking, oh, I've seen a Bentley Bentayga V8 diesel. They're not uncommon. No, but you haven't seen one like this. With plenty of bespoke styling from Bentley's in-house coach builder, Mulliner, this is the kind of premium SUV that is going to leave other manufacturers all at sea. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Since when has Bentley actually been making an SUV, you might ask? For a couple of years now. The Bentayga offers go-anywhere grand touring thanks to the company's engineering ties with the Volkswagen Group. There are oily bits from the Audi SQ7 and the Lamborghini Urus in the Bentayga, not least components from its 4-litre triple-charged turbo diesel. This is the first ever diesel model from the luxury manufacturer. Combines plenty of power and plenty of torque, but also a lot of practicalities. In fact, Bentley say it'll go for over 1,000 kilometres on a single tank. Just how long that fuel lasts in the tank will depend on how you drive it, of course. The Bentayga diesel SUV is the fastest diesel SUV in the world, with a 270 km/h top speed and a 0 to 100 km/h time of just 4.8 seconds. So with the Bentayga already Bentley's top-selling contemporary model, why would I suggest that you won't see another one like this? Well, that comes down to the unique styling of Mulliner, which has been refettling Bentleys for decades. You see, 80 or so years ago, one didn't purchase one's Bentley in its entirety. Instead, from the manufacturer, you would collect a rolling chassis with an engine, suspension system, a modest electrical system even. It's only then you'd take it off to your coach builder of choice to put the bodywork on. That's why if you open the door of a 1930s or 1940s Bentley, you'll see plaques with names like Park Ward or Thrapper Maberly adorning them, signifying who built that body. H.J. Mulliner & Co. are another of these famous names. In fact, Mulliner is probably more famous than most. They remain today Bentley's in-house coach builder, trusted to recreate Bentleys in any way the customer desires. Much like the exterior of the Bentley Bentayga that we're driving, the interior is phenomenal as well. It's pretty bespoke. In fact, this is where the Mulliner craftsmanship really shows itself. The quilting around the door cards, the contrast stitching. There's this impressive mother-of-pearl timepiece. I was going to say clock, but you need to say it's a timepiece made by Breitling. Bentley do little aspects really nicely. Things like the push-pull ventilation knobs on the air conditioning system. I mean, you just don't get that anywhere else. There's plenty of leather inside the Bentayga as well. How much? Every Bentayga features around 13 bull hides as an approximate, and these bull hides aren't small. In fact, they probably measure around the span of a traditional Kiwi ranch slider. The hides don't come from ranches, however. High-altitude cattle beasts are chosen instead from the slopes of southern Germany and Scandinavia, the idea being that there's less chance of a mosquito bite up a mountain. Also, the farms that produce those hides don't have barbed wire fence for obvious reasons. And also, it's worth pointing out that only bull hides are used. No stretch marks, you see. So there's a lot of tradition on show in this Bentayga, but we'll leave the bovine aspect alone for a minute and talk about horsepower. With the V8 diesel, you get 320 kilowatts peak power and a massive 900 newton meters of torque. That figure is quite amazing. It's not the fastest Bentley in the world, though. In fact, just recently, Bentley released what's called the Bentayga Speed, which is the fastest SUV in the world. It's not just the fastest Bentley, it's the fastest SUV. With its latest edition of the Bentley Continental GT, the company has reignited a firm tradition in motorsport. And actually, the same can be said for the Bentayga. Last year, the company entered a lightly modified Bentayga into the Pikes Peak hill climb, driven by none other than Kiwi-born racer Rhys Millen. Millen's run up that famous Colorado peak absolutely smashed the existing production SUV record by almost 2 minutes, the Bentayga achieving the run in 10 minutes, 49.9 seconds. Now, all this record-setting race action is obviously great for car magazine headlines, but it does go to prove that the Bentayga is well sorted for Kiwi roads as well. In fact, it's worth mentioning that race car was only lightly modified with Pirelli performance tyres, race seats and a roll cage. Other than that, engine, transmission, suspension were all standard. The Bentley Bentayga has what's known as a 48-volt dynamic ride system, and what this does is that it smooths out any sort of body roll as you go around a corner. It's quite impressive to see this car from the outside. You can really notice the way that it keeps very, very level as you go through a series of bends. It just makes for such a lovely, refined sort of ride. I mean, it's the sort of thing that you'd expect from Bentley, of course, but it's that sort of high-level technology that's, again, working away really quietly in the background. The same can be said for the level of standard safety specification that comes with every Bentayga. It's got lane keep assist, it's got radar cruise control, so you can set the cruise control and the Bentley will slow or accelerate depending on the action of the car in front. It's got all these kind of safety aids, but I know what you're thinking. Most cars these days have these things. It's the way it's put together that makes it completely different. It's got so much more in terms of character, in terms of build quality, and just in terms of sheer panache. Bentley Bentayga ticks plenty of practical SUV boxes. It really is like having a GT wearing elegant hiking boots, but it's also capable of a 100-metre sprint at the same time. So it's fair to say that a car like the Bentley Bentayga V8 diesel has so much technology under the skin. Of course, with this particular SUV, it's the skin itself which is kind of the headline act. It's an impressive car, and especially with these Mulliner design aspects, you're never going to see another one like it.
Carpool is proudly presented by Classic Cover Prestige. Exceptional cover for exceptional vehicles.
It's a thoroughly modern GT, but the Aston Martin DBS is actually a fire-breathing personification of Aston Martin's history. The DBS was first unveiled back in 1967. It's come and gone a couple of times from the range since then, but it has always remained the absolute personification of Aston Martin's Grand Tourer, and it makes a welcome return with this generation car. In its current form, the DBS brings together elements from the luxurious DB11 as well as the performance-honed Vantage. It features the same 5.2-litre twin-turbo V12 as the DB11, but if you look a lot closer, that's kind of where the similarities actually end, especially when you're talking about the exterior styling. The DBS is wider and it features more of an upright rear end, almost like a dragster silhouette, like it's ready to pounce. Inside the cabin, the instrumentation is lifted directly from the Vantage. In fact, it's something of a Frankenstein's monster, this car, but I do mean monster in a most positive way. There's another reason, though, why this particular DBS is even more special. There's a Q in the bonnet, and that's that stylish script which says Superleggera. Now, Superleggera translates as super light, and this was an alloy manufacturing process that Italian coach builder Touring invented back in the 1930s. They had many clients among car manufacturers, including Aston Martin. Over the decades, there have been DB4, DB5 and DB6 touring models for the lucky few. This latest edition Superleggera isn't simply an exotic or historic nameplate either. It's actually 72 kilograms lighter than the DB11 it was developed from. Unlike its ancestors, though, rather than alloy, it's that miracle material, carbon fibre, that has been used liberally throughout the DBS in order to keep weight down. So, more than 80 years after the name was first deployed, the Superleggera lives up to its heritage. 72 kgs, it's quite a weight saving. Up above us, of course, as you will have seen, it's carbon fibre all the way. In fact, there's carbon fibre everywhere in this car, even on the steering wheel. Actually, there is a lot of alloy used in this new car. The engine is a all-alloy quad overhead cam V12, which pushes out an impressive 533 kilowatts of raw power and a massive 900 newton metres of torque. Aston Martin refer to the sound that comes out of the quad exhaust system on this car as a characterful noise. I just call it angry. There is another similarity between the V8 Vantage and the DBS. It's the F1-inspired double diffuser on this car. This is actually designed to push the car down onto the ground at high speed. In fact, it offers the most downforce that Aston Martin's engineers have ever developed in a production car, 180 kgs at top speed. Yes, it might be Aston Martin's flagship GT, but the DBS certainly has the firepower and the hardware to be a race car as well. That top speed, incidentally, 340 kilometres per hour, so you'll want to be going to a racetrack to experience that. There's so much power and torque available from the V12 in this DBS that Aston Martin don't really even talk in terms of 0 to 100 kilometre per hour times. They talk more in 60 to 200 kilometre per hour times. For such a British brand, it might surprise you to learn that Aston Martin has quite a distinct German link. Not only are its V8s built by AMG in Germany, its V12s are built in a special facility in Cologne, have been for some time. Whether you're at the track or even on a tempting bit of back road, the Aston Martin DBS Superleggera comes with 3 distinct drive modes. There's GT, which is the default setting, along with Sport and Sport Plus. Each mode offers a different degree of sensitivity to driver inputs. It's not an unusual system. In fact, most sports cars of the DBS's ilk do have it. Aston Martin, however, says that their system offers the most mode differentiation of any production car they've ever made. It's quite remarkable, the dramatic change, though, between a comfortable setup and flipping through to, say, more of a track-focused setup. The difference is instantaneous. All of a sudden you're feeling every single bump and expansion joint in the road. Put it back to comfort, I think that's where I want to be. Regardless of the mode you select, the DBS combines a mechanical limited slip differential with dynamic torque vectoring that helps you get all that power and torque down onto the road. Thanks to the DBS's carbon ceramic brakes, coupled with that dynamic torque vectoring system, you've got braking consistency on every wheel, which means that when you're going through high-speed corners, you've got stability and grip when you really need it. Of course, you can't mention the DBS without mentioning Bond, James Bond. The world's least subtle secret agent first drove one on Her Majesty's Secret Service back in the 1960s, and there's two in Daniel Craig era movies. Will we see this one in the next James Bond film? Don't know about that, but I do know you can probably fit a couple of machine guns behind those headlights. At the recent Geneva Motor Show in Europe, Aston Martin unveiled no less than 3 concept cars, one of which is branded a Lagonda, which is the sort of luxury arm of a luxury arm, if you like. It really does show that Aston Martin are in fine health. They're doing some incredible things at the moment. They're full of confidence, and this DBS is proof positive of that. Carpool was proudly presented by Classic Cover Prestige. Exceptional cover for exceptional vehicles.